Hey folks, making a video here today where I'm going to be talking about some current events. There are quite a lot happening right now. Um, I'm going to be talking about um, stuff with Russia, the Russia-Ukraine situation, the situation in Canada with the truckers and how that's been playing out and actually coming to a resolution. Going to look at Trudeau's chart, Justin Trudeau. We have a good time for him. Also, I'm going to do an update on Rogan, Joe Rogan, and what has been going on there. Of course, that's been a pretty hot issue, and there's still a lot happening with that. It's still very alive. And then also, even our former president, Trump, going to look at, he just had some pretty bad news with some lawsuits. So again, just to let people know, again, I'm going to be presenting these are just facts, not going to be a lot of my, you know, big opinions, but these things trigger people. If you're ready to get triggered because I'm not, parroting one extreme or the other, just prepare yourself. I'm not going to have any shenanigans in the comments. I'm going to talk about these things objectively. I'm not even going to weigh in a lot of my own opinions about it, just going to talk about them, okay? So again, if you can't resist being a troll, I'm going to remove you, particularly on YouTube, but that's where it usually comes from. Okay, so I also, before I get into that, I want to talk about the upcoming class that I have called Begin, Reset, and Restore Your Vedic Astrology class. And as you can see, this is, as you can see, it's scrolling there at the bottom of the screen. And again, this is happening March 5th and 6th and March 12th and 13th. You can go to Beginning Vedic Astrology. I'd like to have this tuned up here. .com and register. And when you do, you actually get 30 hours of classes, bonus classes. I'm sorry, about 12 to 15 hours of bonus classes on the astrology signs, the lunar nodes, the nodal axis, how to give a great consultation. There's also a lot of classes right now that are happening with the faculty. Last weekend, I had my teacher and friend Elise de Villiers teach a great class on the astrology signs and also how to make predictions. This upcoming weekend on February 20th, Casey Scott's going to be talking about the frameworks in astrology and the astrology houses. And then the next weekend, I'm going to have Dr. Malini Iyer talking about the cosmology and also the lunar nodes. So these are all bonus classes that you get in addition to all of this material. So again, it's a great way if you're just beginning with astrology. Let's say you've been starting from Western, or you're trying to get a handle on how it's all organized, how to see it all laid out. If you've been just sort of gathering information, but you don't see how it starts here and then culminates, this would be a great thing. If you have been studying off and on for years and like I call snacking, or even a little more, even a little bit more, if you've gone through some of my courses, but you've sort of gotten off the track a little bit, this will also be good for you because it's a way to sort of go back over it all again, see it all laid out again in great specificity and clarity. So beginningvedicastrology.com, you can go check that out. 1 second. I just closed this out. I had a couple windows open here. And so, whoa, quite a few. And so let's get started here. As you can see, now I have a chart up here, which is the nation of Russia chart. As you can see, it's here. And this is based on, let me pull up the chart notes. The chart notes here. This is based on the dissolution of the USSR. This is all research. December 25th, 1991 at approximately 7:15 p.m. Actually, what happened is Mikhail Gorbachev handed over the nuclear codes to Boris Yeltsin. And then by that evening, by 7:32 p.m., the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin and it was replaced with the Russian revolutionary flag. So it's definitely one of those things where this is a pretty authoritative chart. Then we have a few other things. Oops, let me make this a little bigger. Once I pull that notes up, it makes the chart a little distorted. then also we have a few notes of, I'm sorry, a few dates of note. They took Crimea in, Putin moved into Crimea and took that in early 2014, from end of February 2014 until March 2014. That's right when they started the Sun Dasha. So that plays out, makes perfect sense, because as you can see, that time makes for a Cancer ascendant, and the Sun Dasha would have started right when they were taking Crimea, if this chart is accurate. And you see that the Sun is the ruler of Leo. Of course, it's also the ruler of Moon and Jupiter, which are in the sign of Leo. So you can see how that really started a new sort of realm of imperialism, frankly, with Russia, with modern Russia, in the Sun Dasha. But we can even go back when really the modern Russia started, back when Putin first took office, which was in May of 2000. And if you go up, that was in Venus-Mars cycle. So in Venus-Mars, that's when Putin took power. And he's been off and on in power since then, about 20 years. So if we're looking at that, I already made sort of some predictions before recently here about what I thought might be happening here in the Ukraine. We've been looking at this Ukraine thing, and that Putin might move on Ukraine for a while, right? And many people thought by now it would have happened. I said then that I wasn't sure it was. I've said from the beginning, I'm not sure it's going to happen. And in fact, my instinct was that it probably is not going to blow up into the full-blown thing that people are worried about, at least not right now. And I said that for a couple reasons. By the way, here's where the planets are now. I said it for a couple reasons. Number one, because because Saturn is very much in control right now, and it's very much the planet of consequences. And Saturn has really been dominating the Sun here. It still is, because the Sun is now in Aquarius. It's no longer in Capricorn. But again, the reason I said that I thought it would probably wait, and this wasn't even looking at the chart of Russia, this was just my feeling about the energy at the moment, was that because the Sun was in Capricorn, being dominated by Saturn, particularly had a lot of retrogrades going on as well, it just didn't feel like there was enough confidence, because again, Putin knows what the ramifications will be, and he's pretty isolated. Like, it's not like there's a lot of gung-ho energy around the world. And it's not like it's necessarily a popular move or something that he knows is not going to be without, massive consequences. So, and then the next thing that's going to happen, though, is very, very soon, Mars is going to also move into Capricorn. And again, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. People are like, oh, Mars is strong. There he goes. Mars is exalted in Capricorn because we consider the consequences of our actions. Now, when this Mars goes into Capricorn in about 10, it's early, it's like about 2 weeks. It's going to be joining Saturn. So now we're going to have Mars in Capricorn, where we consider our strategy a little bit more, and it's joined Saturn, which is the ruler, which is also saying, be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful. So again, my feeling is this part that I could definitely be wrong. There's no question. Amassing all these troops on the border, they really have that northeastern flank of Ukraine surrounded, with troops right across the border and into Belarus, I think. And of course, that eastern part of Ukraine is also, there's a lot of Russian speakers and a lot of Russian sympathies. A few other things are going on, and if Putin is going to act, he needs to act pretty soon, because the ground is going to thaw pretty soon. And once that happens, it's going to be like a swamp. And so what's been happening, though, is I meant to pull his chart up. Here's Biden's chart. Biden has been been quite effective, I think. And I said this also a while ago, that I think it was a good strategy. I think it's been a good strategy for him to just call it out. He's been calling it out. Putin's game from the beginning has been to try to divide NATO. This is a big part of what it is, I think, to divide NATO and just bring all this pressure and then see what happens. And we've seen what's happened. NATO hasn't cracked. Germany has said, if you run that pipe, if you do it, we're going to cancel that pipeline. Again, who knows what'll happen, but they're calling his bluff. And Putin putting all that pressure on the eastern flank could have made Biden overplay, could have made NATO sort of crack. And there are some cracks here and there for sure, because, especially from Ukraine saying that they wish the United States would stop saying it's inevitable. But again, this could also be kabuki theater. And it's shocking to me how many people that I've seen online who are questioning and who have been calling the bluffs and who have been saying, God, it's like Biden is just dying to go to war, and here in the West we're dying to go to war, and we keep saying it's inevitable and all. But again, what this is doing, this is also a rhetorical game, and this could easily be a bit of kabuki theater between Biden and President Zelensky, of a kind of a good cop, bad cop thing. All kinds of stuff can be going on. So question all the narratives, not just the narrative of the people you hate, if you're going to listen to the news. But anyway, aside from all that, I don't want to get too into the weeds, because there's a lot I wanted to talk about. But again, I think that especially right now, the reason we're seeing a lot of this stuff come to a head, by the way, is because we're close to a full moon, right? This is where we're at right now. We're close to this full moon in Leo, which is on the 16th, which is tomorrow. So we're seeing a lot of these things come to a head, which is one of the reasons why, look at how these situations are coming to a head between the Leo Aquarius axis. I just did an update on Leo, on this full moon in Leo, where I talked about our individual responsibility and our individual persona and our collective responsibilities. And I spoke about it more personally, but this is more of the collective. And this is the collective between the imperialism of the country, or the strong, powerful leader. And right now we live in a world where it's powerful leaders thumping their chest. There's a lot of it, which definitely brings us to the Canada situation. But what's the collective feedback? What comes back collectively? Again, NATO is a total Aquarius kind of institution, at least ideally. It's a group of nations that have come together. Again, this is the rhetoric. You don't have to educate me about how NATO is corrupt. I know it. But I'm saying it's a group of nations coming together that was originally meant to push back against the Warsaw Pact, or the Soviet Union, right? Soviet Union dissolves, but NATO is still there. So this is why, why is NATO even there anymore? And Russia, why won't they just give the concession? Because this is also what people are saying, and it's very legitimate. Why not just give the concession and say, okay, we're not going to extend NATO, we're not going to extend to the border. But again, then all of this would have worked. So they have to be careful. If they appease Putin this way, and then he's like, okay, so now all I need to do is throw a bunch of troops there on the western flank, and I'll get concessions. Okay, well, what happens if I do it again? Again, I don't mean to compare to Hitler necessarily, but this is what happened with Hitler. They're like, okay, you can just take the Sudetenland. Okay, if I can just take that, what else can I take? So the capitulations to a dictator or to a dictatorial move is always tricky. So anyway, a lot of this is what's going on, and Putin wants concessions. He hasn't lost anything yet. He's just gained. However, at some point, he wants to. There were ideas that he might be retreating. I think he's looking for a face-saving way out at this point, and they'll give it to him because nobody wants this. But they're trying to give it to him without any concession, and he might have already gotten concessions to some extent. Who knows? But anyway, we can see by the astrology, that's really the point here, is that what's coming ahead, I'll run these transits, is, and again, so I show why. These are, more than anything, these are case studies, okay, about current events. And I do pay attention to them. But again, we can see when I did the last prediction on this, I think it was Makara Sankranti, so I think it was even a month ago. It's already the middle of February, man. Time's going fast. but Sun, I could see that Sun was going to be in Capricorn. It was going to be Saturn was going to be clamping down on it. Then it was, and I said, I don't see that. I think it's going to be more caution. And then I said, even later, oops, sorry, yeah, even later, when Mars starts to move, again, this is where we're at now, but this is early March, then Saturn Mars happens, and it's just not good strategy. It's messy. War is messy, ugly. Putin is not as popular as people might think. I doubt he could win a democratic election. So all that needs to happen is he starts to do this. Russia gets isolated. Crippling sanctions come down. The people rise up. They start coming back in body bags as well. And what's the point of all that? All right. So that's what I see here, and I see it playing out this way. So far, I've been right about the prediction. It hasn't happened. And what's going to be more dangerous is when Rahu moves into Aries later in the year. That's what I've even said in my 2022 forecast. I didn't talk about this part of the year as being as dangerous, nearly as dangerous as when Rahu goes into Aries. And then in the summer, Mars is going to join Rahu in Aries. So again, I've been saying it. So plant a flag there and wait and see. That's going to be much more volatile. This, I think, is going to maintain, and I think it's not going to get hot. If it does, it might be something smaller, but I think Putin wants concessions and some other kinds of things. And even if he doesn't get them, I think he's going to have to back out on some level. Something might be done, face saving in some way. But again, I could be wrong, no question about it, because especially Mars, Venus right now, right near each other in Sagittarius, there's a lot of combustible energy going on. There's no question. Even Sun, Jupiter are going to get more combust. This combustion of Mars, Venus is going to last for a while, like I said, particularly when they go into Capricorn. So it's certainly possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't see all this energy there. But I'm coming down on this side of it and choosing to remain an optimist as well, a little bit. But I can definitely see the astrological situation that would show that it doesn't happen. The situation in, let me do Rogan next. So I did the I did the Joe Rogan situation back when it first happened at the end of January, a couple weeks ago. And I came out and did a video before he even apologized. You can go back and watch that video, and I did it before the apologies and all that stuff happened. And, you know, I got all of that pretty right on, including almost exact stuff that he said. In that video I did, I was reading that he's just really hit a patch where he ain't operating from the same place of neutrality and open-mindedness and whatnot that he had been, which is what made him really popular. And he had really gotten away from that for a few months, especially I think since he got COVID. And I talked about that. And I also said that I think he was going to snap out of it. And at the time, there was no indication that he would. He hadn't apologized for anything. And Spotify had removed Neil Young, and they had said, we're behind Rogan 100%. Now, again, that's what was going on in front of the cameras or whatever. And I did the reading back then, and I said, nah, Rahu is going to get closer to his ascendant. He's sitting there. He's utterly confused. And I also evaluated his chart. He's got a Jupiter in Cancer. He's got, you know, in general, he's a guy trying to do his best, trying to do right. He's a complicated figure, so I'm not going to do just a pure case study here. But what I said was that he was going to stay confused around a lot of this stuff. And he has. He's apologized. And then another thing came out where he's using the N-word. And then he came out this last week and said, oh, it's all just a political hit job. And he seemed, again, he's just kind of flailing around back and forth with it. But here's what I think. Again, you can see Rahu is now 259. His ascendant is 224. So this is what I was looking at. This was really what the case study was about, is what's going to happen here. And again, if we move this forward even days at this point, move it forward a few days here, it's going to be right on his ascendant. Like, it's almost exact 17th. It crosses it on like the 17th, 8th, and 18th. So literally later this week, it's like right on his ascendant right now, as much as it could be. Again, I think, again, because he's in Saturn, Jupiter. It was Saturn, Jupiter. Yeah, he's starting Saturn, Jupiter, Sun. That's what it was. I knew there was a big shift coming. So he's in Saturn, Jupiter, Venus right now. It's going to be Saturn, Jupiter, Sun starting in March. So it's not that far away. And then right after that, Rahu goes over his natal Rahu, right? But I really wouldn't be surprised if he reaches out, particularly like to some African American leaders, black leaders, and really opens up an honest dialogue about the black stuff, because he knows he's wrong. He knows he just knows that wasn't that wasn't helpful dialogue, and that he was being just an idiotic knucklehead about that. And again, we can forgive him for that, especially if someone comes out and says, you know what, that was wrong. But it's just hard, because a lot of people, frankly, including me, I've been broadcasting since 2007. Those words have never even entered my head when I've been talking, or haven't just like never. Those thoughts don't come into my head, and it's hard to see someone say it over and over again for whatever reason. And there's times when it is comedy, and just realizing that, okay, I'm sorry, but that's not enough. And that reasonable people think that if this is going to be a healing moment, then it's up to you, Rogan, to make it a healing moment. Because I know Rogan loves my broadcast. I'm saying, Joe, come on. Making a quick video saying, hey, I know I'm embarrassed, that was dumb. It ain't enough. It's kind of not enough. What would be enough would be bring some of these black leaders on and talk about it. If you want it to be a healing moment, then make it a healing moment. Not like it's always said, oh, it's a instructive moment. Well, it's instructive what? So that we can learn about you. How about you make it instructive? And like, really, how about platform the people that want to bring the healing. If you want to bring the healing, then bring it. You got the platform still. You still got the platform. So rather than just come out and say, you know what, it's right, I'm sorry, you're right, blah, blah, blah. Now let me just get back to saying other things and then fringy stuff. If you want it to really be a healing moment, you can. You could bring Cornel West on there. You could bring other people on and have the conversations, and you'll have to squirm for 5 or 10 minutes. But then you can move on. By the way, Bill Maher did that a few years ago. When he used the N-word on his TV show. What's it called? Politically Incorrect. Is it still called that, or what's it called? Oh, Real Time. That's right. And he used the N-word and took a lot of heat for it. And then he manned up. He brought on, I think it was Ice Cube, one of the rappers, brought on Ice Cube and let Ice Cube put it on him. And he squirmed and felt uncomfortable and embarrassed, but he went through it. So I think that kind of thing, it's possible. It might not happen. Who knows? But I think it's possible. And I would bet Rogan is thinking about these things, because I think he's in his heart of hearts, someone who is really trying to do his best. I think, and by the way, even in those videos, I found them to be very sincere. The problem isn't the sincerity of the apologies. The problem is the nature of the person. You can give a very sincere apology, totally believing 100% that there's really no chance at all that anything I said was racist at all. It's just not. Really, it's not. And you could still just not get how that comes across, what it says about you. And we get that you're sorry, and sincerely know it and trust. Yes, you're sorry for all of that. But what people, perhaps in the black community, like there's the one singer, India, I'm sorry, I just don't know their names. And even Trevor Noah or some of the others have come out and been like, but you don't get it. This is the reason why. So anyway, my feeling is that there's a real possibility something is going to be, and the reason I keep talking about him in this, and again, try to see a little bit beyond also, I'm talking about the story a lot and bringing in my views, quote, and the astrology of it, because it's still very hot. Try not to lose the case study in it, even though I might be. It's very much like this Rahu transit is exact. You're watching a living case study of Rahu going over the ascendant of someone with a gigantic audience and just Rahuing all around. By the way, I even said this on a recent on even those videos. Look at those apology videos, and they're so Rahu-like. It's like his head. It's like this is what the video's like. I just want to say, and he's like face is like this head right up against the camera. It's like these weird video. Like you look at them and you're like, God, Joe, back off. Make a video that's not. But it's even like Rahu, like this disembodied head going rah rah rah. But you're seeing this is such a Rahu moment, right? And so let's see if he does something like that. Because again, the other thing I predicted, and I can tell you, is that again, the biggest shift that's going to be happening after Rahu leaves and after it clears his ascendant, again, this could be if let's say even later this week or sometime very soon, which could happen because Rahu is right on the ascendant. He has someone like Cornel West on, or some great black leader, or rapper, or whoever it is, to speak for the black community, a black woman like this singer, India. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. What a transformative healing moment that could be, and how much respect he would transform this into something where you can see that we don't have to just retreat to our camps and act like morons defending ourselves. Look, if you know you screwed up and you said it and you want the apologies, be sincere. Geez, sit for an uncomfortable 2 hours once and then get back to being whatever it is with this knowledge. Again, it wouldn't be that much. And I have a feeling he could do it. And maybe he will do it in the next few days. Maybe he won't. Again, you never know about these things because I don't know the man personally, but we do have a good birth time and we can see the case study right in front of us. By the way, the other thing is this Sun Jupiter right through his 10th house right now. Saturn Mercury going through his 9th house. He's got this Taurus ascendant, right? He's also Mars Venus here in Sagittarius in his 8th house. So this is a banging case study. That's why I keep coming back to it. Not because I love him or love it, but it's ripe. And this is how I learned astrology a lot too. And it's how you can also learn, particularly about transits. So again, when I do these case studies, sometimes people, they act like I'm doing it because I want to talk about politics or something. I'm not. It's a case study. And I know I get into that part of it, but I'm getting into that part because I am interested, but also because it fills in the gaps and shows, oh yeah, like the big, case study head or the choices that are before him right now and what could turn this into something that could be an authentic healing moment based on his own words, or maybe it won't. Maybe it'll teach us something else, teachable moment. That's what they always say. But again, if you go forward here a couple weeks, you'll watch and see Ketu is also going to then go over these planets in his 6th house by the time he goes into Venus on Saturn, Jupiter, Sun in March. Ketu will be over his 6th house, right? And so that's a whole different thing. There could be a lot of enemies, difficulties at that time. So in March, there could be some big shifts. And, again, this is why I said he might lose that deal at Spotify or something like that. So that's that one. I wanted to talk about Trudeau here. Look at his chart. We have a good time for Trudeau as well. I'm going to take a drink here real quick. All right, 1 second. Okay. So again, this trucker strike started a few weeks ago. And, in Canada, they've had just some really, their vaccine policies have just been so restrictive where people have to show vaccine cards and in many ways to do basic things. And this trucker strike started a few weeks ago. And just recently, in fact, just this morning, Trudeau came out and declared emergency powers to force them all to leave and to go home. And again, it was interrupting commerce across the border into the US and things like that as well. So again, we could see this as we're building up to this full moon, and particularly Trudeau has Leo ascendant, and he second here. Yeah, he's in Moon Dasha, right? And he so this full moon is like going to be in his first house. The sun and Jupiter are going through his seventh house. So he's a Leo person. His ascendant is Magha Nakshatra. So this is also why I wanted to check out and see if we had a good time for him, because this is so lit up, right? And you can see how the chart of the leader is so important for the country, right? So you can see he's in Moon Venus Dasha. He took power. I did the notes here. Let me look real quick. Chart notes. I think it was 2015, I believe. Yeah. Oh, November 4th, 2015, when he was in Moon Jupiter, he came to power. I always like to see. Yeah. November 14th, 2015. So he was in Moon Jupiter when he came to power. And particularly like in the D10, the moon rules K2 in the ninth. Jupiter is very powerful. Of course, Jupiter rules the sun. So moon Jupiter, it rules his sun in Sagittarius and also his moon Mars in Pisces. So moon Jupiter was quite powerful for him in that context to bring him to power. And when he was born, Jupiter forms powerful Raja Yoga here, the fifth lord and the fourth in Scorpio. So Moon Venus, has been is his cycle right now. Venus is a much different planet. It's in the sixth house. It's with Rahu. Venus is also the ruler, though, of this Saturn in the 10th house, this retrograde Saturn in the 10th house. This is also getting activated. This Saturn, this retrograde Saturn, which is the ruler of the sixth and the seventh houses. So again, you could really see, and I wanted to see the indicators of what his karmas were right now. So Moon Venus really is showing quite a bit, particularly in the D1 and also in the D9. The moon is the ruler of the D9 chart. And again, that just shows overall like merit, luck, also legal stuff you can read from the D9. And his moon is this really shows a big part of what how his election came about, as a kind of inspiring leader. I mean, he's been reelected a few times. So the moon is the ruler of that D9, which shows his capacities as an inspiring leader, so to speak. It's also the ninth lord in the D10 and the ruler of K2. By the way, this is also very interesting. In the D10, again, the D10 is career, and you can see K2 has to do with legacies, family. His father was the former premier of Canada. So you can even see that in the Moon Dasha, Moon activated K2 in the ninth in his D10. So again, his family lineage, this is what K2 was activated in the D10 chart in the Moon Dasha as K2 is in Cancer. But anyway, so this Moon Venus here is very important. Sixth house, again, it's the ruler of the third and of the third and the 10th. So it's the 10th lord for a Leo as well. So it shows their duties and responsibilities, and for him, it's ruling this retrograde Saturn. So this is also shown where he's had, since then, I think there's been these scandals of him with no masks and all this stuff. He's been shown a couple times to not be wearing masks and whatnot, in Moon K2 as well. So he's definitely gone out of favor that's all been in Moon Venus, I think. In Moon Venus, it's not been so good for his career. He's really gone out of favor with the Canadian people in this context. Again, I'm not going to comment so much on all of the politics stuff. There is all kinds of things, just to say that truckers' rebellion in Canada was also very complicated. A lot of it was also driven by right-wing media in the U.S. For sure. We already know this. Again, these are just circumstances. I'm just looking at the nature, like, of Trudeau and having all this pile up here now in his 7th house, and these karmas that are also really piling up for him. And again, he had to come out and use these emergency authorization powers. And of course, he's being lambasted for it, being called, dictator and stuff like that. For those who don't know, a lot of the measures in Canada, though, are much more strict than they have been in other countries. But they have a higher vaccination rate as a result. But there's been quite a bit of resentment that has been fostered as a result. So again, like everything, it's ambiguous. They were definitely much more like, okay, mandates and all that stuff, yes. But then, so more people got vaccinated, but then there's also a very strong resentment that has been that has been built, and as a result. So again, this is just the karma of how this thing is playing out, and we can see the culmination here coming today. Again, this moon is opposite Saturn, Mercury, and this is the day that he came out and said, that his, that this was enough, that he was going to use these powers that he has. And there's some comments coming in, and I'm kind of looking and kind of not, but again, there's a lot of information around this. And of course, as people are saying, 90% of the truckers are vaxxed, the rest can work. It's a very tricky issue. And at some point, when you start doing the protests are legal, but at some point they either have to end or some way they have to resolve. And when it's just like, no, now we're just going to get more and more disruptive. We're going to clog up the economy. We're not going to let truckers cross the border. We're just, again, at some point also, the point has been made and it has to end. And by the way, I'll just say this last thing here, that, and I'm just going to say this in a general sense, as it relates to the right-wing coverage in the U.S., especially like Fox News and all of that. Again, there was so much hypocrisy to go around in that regard, because when it was protests for like Black Lives Matter and other things like that, everything was like, no way, no protest. Everything was about business and these businesses losing all this business and business and business. Here, truckers clog up business and do all that. Not a word. They're heroes. And by the way, you hear not just right-wing media, but right-wing politicians in the U.S. as well. Ted Cruz and these other people commenting on this, and from the safety, saying that it's heroic and stuff. By the way, I agree with protests when things, and I understand why there are protests, because in Canada, the vax issue is much different here than it is in the US. And I understand the origin of a lot of the protests, but again, it's a tricky thing. And just to not really get deep into it, but also see how both, I understand why there's protests, but I also understand why at some point they have to end. And when you're the head of a country, you wind up with bad choices. So you sign on to be the head of a country, and you have a responsibility to allow something to go on for a while. And by the way, it went on for weeks and weeks, but then at some point be like, okay, that's enough, and I have the authority to do it, so I have to do it. So you see that with him. And again, it's also, regardless of how people come down on the issue, it's a nuanced issue for sure. It's not as simple as anyone might think, and I don't see it as that simple. I think some people, by the way, the ones that I did mention, are really just doing it. They're just opportunistic, frankly. I think the right wing in America, the American right wing commentary and politicians, it's just opportunistic for them. It's just an opportunity for them to say, see, and to spread propaganda. They don't really have, they're utter hypocrites when it comes to the other side. If there's protest that's against something they're against, then they're against it. Again, that's nothing but opportunism. And that has nothing really to do with the real issues that are happening in Canada, and the real issues that brought about the protests, or even that are ending them. There are people who sit back and just use it for their own gain. And that's also part of it, by the way. And again, right-wing media and politicians in the US just fomenting more outrage. And again, it somehow comes back to it's the left's fault and whatever. It's the same thing. It just winds up a kind of circular message where anyway, and those people are vaxxed as well. So again, when you get into that part of it, that's also just part of the story that brings in this sort of nuance. So anyway, this, again, that's going to upset some people. That's fine. I hope you can see beyond what you think of my views and see the astrology part of it, because to me, that's the most interesting part. It's Trudeau's, it's a full moon in his first house, in his Magha ascendant. You can see even the transit, Saturn moon opposite here. So he had to come down like the authority. And again, this is total Aquarius Leo stuff. Like I said, in this case, he's the Leo. He's the head of the country that has to come out and say, okay, that's enough. In the name of what's best for all of us, I got to stop this. And I know people are going to be freaking out, and there's a certain amount of people are going to call me a fascist and a dictator. And, you know, for example, Tucker Carlson compared him to Stalin, literally with a straight face, that it's Stalin-esque. Okay, where's all the death camps, concentration? I mean, again, there is no shame on certain corners of this. It's just an excuse to, you know, foment the same outrage. You know, trying to stop something that at some point has to stop. It's not like what, are just going to never drive a truck again and think there are no consequences ever and just clog up everything forever. At some point, something has to stop. But again, you sign on for that kind of job. So you can see he's got Jupiter, he's got Sun Jupiter going through his 7th house now. And Saturn Mercury is also here going over his Venus, which is that Dasha planet. So one more, if we're not controversial enough, I'm going to also talk about Donald Trump. And he's had some bad news lately, in case you don't know. And his, again, this is also these big transits going through his 7th house, just with some of these, with especially things in his business. He just had his accounting firm just basically said, we're disavowing like all of everything in those tax returns, because he's getting civil suits against him for what could be serious financial crimes, for sure. I mean, anybody else would have been already indicted, probably. Not probably, almost certainly, with what's a matter of public record. You can look up devaluing at some times, overvaluing others. And his accounting firm of 10 years has basically said, we're absolving ourselves of all of this, probably because they know that they're going to have to stand behind some of this. And they've basically said, you can't rely on any of this, any of these numbers. That's like, again, we might not understand this as it relates to financial crimes, but literally the ability, for example, of the Trump organization to then go, well, it was, I think they're called Masler or something. Well, they're the accountants and they did the accounting. So ask my accountant. The accountant is saying, look, don't ask us at this point. We realize that all of this stuff is totally unreliable. Basically, they're saying, if you call us into court, this is the bottom line with all of this, is that if this goes to court, we're washing our hands of all of it. And again, that's at a great risk to them, because for an accounting firm to absolve themselves of a client like that, they're basically also saying to other clients of theirs, it really damages their reputation. So they must have been and must be in some real hot water, and realize that the Trump organization is in some really hot water if they're going to like run from the whole thing. You go, oh, sorry, I'm pulling the ripcord on this. We don't know how to explain these numbers. These are the numbers we got from them, and I think it was like their own internal review realized that, oh yeah, this doesn't make sense. So we're not standing behind any of this for 10 years. Man, that is like, you know, that, and if their accounting firm is doing that, again, and this is new. I mean, up through all of the cases so far, it's been like the accountants have been there, and this is why even the others in the family, Ivanka and the others, are like saying, oh, it's all the accountant's fault, because the accountants came out and said, you can't rely on any of this we're not going to back up any of this at this point. Again, it's like remarkable. And so this is really bad news for a business. And again, you can see he's in Jupiter Mercury. He's in Jupiter Mercury that he started last year, and it's Jupiter Mercury Venus. Right now, Venus is in his 12th house in the Rashi chart, and this Mercury's in the ninth, so in the D9, and Mercury's also the ruler of the D9, and it's in the ninth house. So you can see why he's had so much litigation in his life. But again, this is terrible news, and these transits happening through his seventh house, and again, this full moon is happening in his first house as well. That's why it's interesting, because I know the full moon is in Magha. And so he's getting this full moon in his first house. And man, that's not a good turn of events. And it could be these are very serious crimes. Anybody else would have been indicted, or would just be totally would have to plea or something like that. So again, I brought that one up because, again, this is just factual that just happened, and I'm not going to talk about anything else with him. But so anyway, I just wanted to put a little bit of this out there. And again, so just sort of checking in with some current events and some past predictions. I think right now with Russia, we're going to be, I have a feeling that the strategy, by the way, here's old Sleepy Joe, and his strategies have worked pretty well. And K2 going over his ascendant, K2 is going to keep going. But his strategies so far, I think, with Russia, and bringing all this out, and again, outing them, so to speak, and being very public about all this, so that it's not like hanging out in some, corner where, where it can just sort of hang out somewhere, like in darkness and fear, is a good thing. And I think that's been the strategy the whole time, right? You just come out and say, hey, okay, you're going to do it? Do it. You're building all this pressure. Come on, tough guy, do it, I guess. We got some hurt waiting for you. You sure your people want that? You sure you want some body bags? You sure you can handle it? You sure you can handle these crippling sanctions? Nobody wants you to do it. Nobody wants you to do it. You sure this is really what's going on? So it's so far proven to be a good strategy, because he hasn't moved yet. And again, as I say, I think then the next few weeks to the month or so, I have a feeling it's going to start to diffuse at some point. Once the ground thaws and it's like a swamp in eastern Ukraine, they're not going to be able to roll tanks through. It's hard to think they're just going to attack them through the air. So I hope I'm right about this. And by the way, so again, I am making predictions here. So I think astrologers should every now and then come out and say clear predictions like I'm doing. I think this Russia, I said it a while ago, and I'm thinking that it's not going to blow up into a full hot war, World War III mess that everybody is afraid of. I'm predicting that that's not going to happen, at least not right now. We'll look again later, but I have a feeling, my instinct is that's not what's going to happen. With Rogan, I said, I think maybe even the next few days or the next week or two or something like that, very soon, I have a feeling he might step up and really do the right thing and have a very good conversation, especially like with some black leaders or something, and really use that platform for good, and really hopefully ingratiate himself again and show people that he really is sincere about, sitting there being uncomfortable a little bit, having, again, it's great that he apologized, especially for the black comments and stuff. But if you want it to be a teachable moment, then teach, big guy. You're the one. You're the man. Do it. You want redemption? Go get it. And I'm going to say I think he will. I could definitely be wrong, of course, like everything. But I think somehow it's going to, if not that specifically, something like that, I think could definitely happen where he surprises us and chills out. He could also just go absolutely crazy, and that's no question. Rahu going over his ascendant, He's a fighter, social media figure. He could just turn into a raving lunatic. There's no question. That's possible. Again, looking at his chart, I think he's underneath. Oh, he's got Moon in Libra. Of course, it's with K2. It's also with Mars. But generally, Moon in Libra wants to feel good. That can't feel good about people thinking he's a racist. And he's not just going, you're all a bunch of crazy people. I think he's authentically introspective. Like, all these people that I like and respect, these aren't crazy people. And they're saying, yeah, maybe just a disconnected head video where I apologize. Maybe that's not enough for doing all that. Maybe it is an authentic, teachable moment where I maybe could really make a difference. Would it be that hard? Bring on some of these guys and just talk, So I have a feeling that I think that's a distinct possibility. Also, possibility that none of that happens and I'm wrong, but let's see. I was right about the first one, and I nailed it pretty clean. Even the next day, he came out and owned up the way I thought he would. So again, with Trudeau, we already saw this, but I think he's going to be dealing with this quite a bit. He goes into Moon Sun in May, and the Sun is his ruling planet in the 5th house. I think there are better days ahead for him. Moon Venus has not been a good dasha for him, just because Venus is the 3rd and 10th lord. Venus is the ruler of this retrograde Saturn. Venus is in the 6th with Rahu. It's really not, in the D10, it's also like 7th and 12th lord. It's really not a great planet for him, whereas the Sun, of course, he's ruled by the Sun. Sun is in Sagittarius. It's in the ascendant in the D9, and it's in the 5th house in the D10. I think things will get better for him in general when in the middle of May and whatnot. But I think he's going to still have a rough ride for a while here through the rest of this, the rest of this Moon Venus time. And and so with Trump, again, we just had this sort of bad news. Honestly, I don't think anything will really happen. It could be, but this is some of the most serious. These are some serious financial crimes. There's no question, particularly when your accounting firm turns their back on you. If his CEO flips, if Weisselberg flips totally, some people are already cooperating. It's already, again, because we live in a place where there's such different standards of justice, you could say he'll never pay for it. He'll never pay for the financial crimes of Trump, of all this shady business deals, because he was a former president. And if he wasn't, he would absolutely, you or I did any of this stuff, there would be we wouldn't even be talking about this. So Trump, I'm not saying I think there'll be any consequences, but I think it's just an interesting case study that right before this full moon, again, where Saturn is still combust, it's still close to the Sun. And again, he's in Jupiter Mercury. Mercury just came out of being retrograde, and it's going through the 6th and all this. You can see the bad news coming here. And again, he's in Jupiter Mercury, Venus, and Venus again is in the 12th house with Saturn. It's a planet of loss in general, and even loss of money, loss of fame, because it's a 10th lord in the 12th. So you could see this as well. So anyway, folks, I hesitated doing this because I know people, it's almost like one of those things these days. I was watching, I think it was someone was interviewing someone else or whatever, and they're like, no matter what you say, especially if you have a long talk about something and you talk about things, and like your view on an issue is more than just these people are wrong, these people are that. If your view is more than that, you're just going to make everybody angry. You sort of piss everybody off. So, but I do it anyway because I like the case study. I enjoy it. And I enjoy, and I think it's good for astrologers once in a while to actually make predictions. I do them when I have a decent chart and I care enough about it. I don't always feel like it, or I'm not always that interested. But some of these things lately I've been kind of interested in, so I'm doing it. So there's that. And again, regardless of what what you might think about these specific issues. I try to be reasonable, but of course I have views, and if you disagree with them, that's fine. If you want to disagree with me, do it politely, or I might just block you because I get tired of the projections of what you think I am. But again, these also try to look at the case study as well, because that's really the most important thing to me, is really the case study and the astrology. And again, I also just want to let people know about the upcoming course. And you can see the thing scrolling along the bottom, that for beginningvedicastrology.com, a great way for you to go beyond just kind of gathering information here and there, and to really take things to a deeper level. Devon Elizabeth said, I like your commentary. Please don't censor yourself. No, I won't. I'll still do it. I frankly, I just don't always feel like it. But no, I'm always going to. If it's interesting to me, I'm going to do it, because really what you people are seeing, I'm interested in this. I'm just doing it publicly. I'm just talking about things that are interesting to me, and I'm just doing it publicly. And so, no, if I feel like I'll deal with the rest of it, but I'm just letting people know also. I also say those things because I really want people to chill out. Like, for example, I don't want Joe Rogan canceled. I'm not into things like cancel culture and all like that. I want people to be able to have conversations where maybe you disagree, but you don't think, I should be canceled, or that I'm the devil or whatever. Like, this is the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems in our culture and world now is nobody does nuance. And by the way, I talked about this in the recent video of Leo and Aquarius, this polarizing. Everything is either ice cream and unicorns or the gates of hell. And frankly, nothing is that way. And so again, if you have any kind of nuance, it's like, oh, you're just a da da da, and we got to put a label on someone. And by the way, calling Joe Rogan a racist is BS. He's not a racist. He made some mistakes. He apologized for them, but he hasn't gone. There's things that he's not sure of yet, and whatever, But again, we're so quick to label everybody as a fascist or this or that, because we're not curious enough, and we won't bother to actually learn the thing. We just want to get our hot take and get all jacked up emotionally about something, and so I'm always going to talk about things. I'll talk about them this way, and whatever happens, I'm always hoping that that people do get it and understand that there are better ways to talk about things and whatnot. So we'll just leave it at that, and you all take care.